So let's go more into AI. So what are the issues that you see with AI that carriers are getting wrong and they need MGAs for?
So my thesis, which may be wrong, right, is that AI will go a bit the way that cyber did. So if you think back a few years, maybe like more than a decade now, cyber was kind of silently included in all sorts of policies, right? And people didn't really think it was a big risk and it was all fine until the claims started coming. And the first thing that carriers tend to do when they suddenly get a lot of claims they weren't expecting is exclude things from the policy. So then you've got a bit of a problem because there's this risk out there and now it's excluded. So guess what? MGAs and specialists kind of set up, right? Because it's like, well, someone needs to focus on this. We know about it. It needs to be insured. Then usually over time, some of the more traditional carriers, there is more data and they become a bit more comfortable with the risk. So maybe they do start underwriting it again, either kind of putting it back or putting it as a rider on existing policies or as a separate line of business, but more kind of mainstream. And also the companies start to understand how to kind of assess the potential insureds, right? So you can't get, or in most cases, you can't get cyber insurance without having certain standards in place, filling out questionnaires and all this kind of stuff, and maybe being interviewed by the broker or the company. And if you lie on the forms, then the policy is invalid. So they've worked out a kind of like, okay, there needs to be a certain health check before we're going to give somebody cyber insurance, right? One of the challenges so I think AI is going to go the same way. At the moment, AI is included in lots of policies. Pretty soon this is going to start going wrong, and I think it's going to be excluded or partially excluded. And there are some specialist companies and MGAs being set up now, particularly focused on AI. At the end of the day, AI is so big that it's going to have to be part of things like E&O and D&O and cyber and so on. But the carriers need to understand what they're underwriting. And with AI, I think we're still, and actually this links with cyber, we're still at the point of like, okay, what do we need to know to be satisfied that they're really managing the risk? And the cyber risk obviously has changed because of AI, because of mythos and all these kind of things, right? It's much easier to exploit any deficiencies in the system. And with AI itself, it's changing so quickly that, you can have a checklist of how to be good at managing AI, but it might be kind of wrong 2 weeks later. So I think this is a genuine challenge for the market, for MGAs working in this space, and for the companies providing capacity, and for the more traditional insurers. But, it makes it interesting, right?
Now, you had mentioned that as the carriers get more data and they become more comfortable, they start writing these policies themselves. So does that mean that the MGAs are R&D for them?
Well, so it depends who the MGAs are working with, right? So in many cases, the MGAs are working with companies that focus on providing capacity with MGAs and not with all the big carriers. There is a bit of that, but it's also not that easy to replicate the expertise. So I think it goes a bit to one of my favorite topics, right, about risk appetite. If you're leaving a company to set up an MGA, you have a certain risk appetite for your own personal career as well as for the risks you're underwriting. Some of the traditional carriers, they might be more nervous about something with less data and so on. And then for the capacity providers, if that's the right word, with the MGAs, they have to decide. I mean, they like track records too, right? They do vetting and analysis on the MGAs. But in some cases, with some of these new risks, there is no track record. So you really have to go on the people and what they've done before and so on. And one of the challenges for these companies is, you don't want to bet the farm on some new team writing some new risk, right? So the companies who are supporting MGAs want to proceed carefully, don't want to retain too much of the risk of some of these new things, and want them to kind of like build up a track record. Having said that, if the MGA is successful and the results are good, then the capital provider will be happy. Then if the bigger carriers want to get back into this line of business, then there's a bit of a kind of like war for talent, right? Because if the folks are happy in the MGA and they're doing well, maybe they want to stay in the MGA and they don't want to go and work for a big carrier again. So it gets kind of interesting.